Hello, friends. All right, let's go ahead and go over a month cycle of bookkeeping fundamentals and basics. First thing we want to do is we need to get those transactions into QBO. And this is the most important step, I believe, is making sure that the data that is in your accounting software or books, whatever you even may be using, is correct. I always say garbage in, garbage out. So this is your first point of entry to make sure that the reports at the end of the month and end of a quarter, the end of the year, for tax purposes, for the client to manage their business is very, very important. And this is where it kicks off right here. So this is a really important part of bookkeeping, is making sure that the data is correct. One way you can get data in is by connecting your bank to QBO. That's the way I suggest. And then also too, if you run into a client that cannot connect to their bank that they have, for whatever reason, you can also bring in the transactions through a CSV file or a QBO file that you can download from the bank's site. So what I do is I do want to go through that with you. So if you can't connect to a bank, you can come over here, click the drop-down arrow, and upload from file. And so what you're going to do is you're going to choose where that file is after you've already downloaded the activity from your bank. Click continue. And you're going to go ahead and match up that bank here. So this is why I always suggest in your chart of accounts that you use the last 4 digit of that account number so that you can easily recognize it when you're reconciling, when you're matching anything up, looking at a report or a statement. There's your reference point. Click continue. And it's going to ask you a couple of things about the data. So is the first row in your file a header? This is where it would say the fields. So the date, description, amount. This would be your header field. How many columns show amounts? This would be if you have a debit, credit, or a payment, spend column. I would say most of the time they come in one column, but look at your spreadsheet, see what it says. And then the date format used in your file. Normally they're all month, day, and then year. But again, look at your file and see how it's formatted. Here, our spreadsheet already has the date, description, and amount in it. So you want to make sure that those columns are mapped appropriately. Click continue. And here's all the transactions that are in that spreadsheet. So you can go ahead and click all of them or click the ones that you want to import. I don't see why you wouldn't want to import all of them if it's all activity from your bank. So let's go ahead and click continue. It's telling us that we've got 30 transactions to import. I want to import those, so click yes. Now our import is complete. So let's go ahead and go back to our banking tab and see our transactions. Great, our import has been completed. So let's go ahead and click done. And that brings us back to the banking tab. And then we'll be able to see, here's our 30 transactions that we just imported into bank feeds. So this would be the same way that your bank would connect to QuickBooks, and QuickBooks would download those transactions when you would update the connection, or most of the time they're automatic. Or you can go in and import. So now that we've got some transactions, the first step is to get this data to see if it's in QuickBooks already, if we need to add it, if there's a match. There's all sorts of things going on here. You can see up here that here's our 4 accounts. So let's go over this client's accounts that they have connected. We've got a payroll account. We've got an operations account. I'm going to assume that both of these are checkings. We've got an American Express, which is a credit card account. And we also have a Chase Visa, which is a credit card account. You do want to make sure that all the business activity is coming into QuickBooks. You need a full picture. So any account that has business activity going through it, it needs to be connected to QuickBooks so that we've got all those transactions and all that business activity, and that we don't miss anything. I want to talk about the different transactions or action types, I guess, let's say, that you will see in the bank feeds. You'll see add, which means QuickBooks couldn't match it to a transaction already in QuickBooks, and it matches it by the amount and check number if it was a check. Also, record transfer. So as you can see here, on this date, so May 25th, in the description was online banking transfer from checking 0828. As you can see, we are in the account 1234. So what this is saying is it's paired because we have both accounts linked in QuickBooks. It can see that, oh, you had a transfer from 0828 that went into this account 1234 for $2,500. So it's paired to another transaction. You really want to watch these transfers from accounts to accounts. because what has happened in the past is someone will record a transaction and add this transfer and then come into B of A or the other account 0828 and come see that 2,500 and record transfer. Now you've duplicated that transfer. So that's where you really want to watch out. And here actually you saw the AI working already. QuickBooks is looking for that data that it might match to, and there it just picked up those to see it. And be able to pair those. So it's really nice that it's added this technology so that duplicates aren't getting in as frequently. So you kind of want to watch for those. Another one is a match, which we can see right here. So we've got, a customer, invoice 1001, that has an outstanding balance of $290. And you can see here that we received $290. Now, I never want you to say, oh, great, match, unless you know for sure you've got paperwork and you know that 1001 number one customer paid that $290, then go ahead and match it. But it's always helpful to come down here and make sure that the information is correct. It's not another $290 payment. And then it really belongs to that invoice. So just always verify. Like I said, again, this is the main point of entry of some of these transactions. You want to get it right now. Now we verified that number one customer did pay us $290 on 6/1 on invoice 1001. So we can go ahead and come over here and match. And now you've accepted a payment on that invoice from that deposit. Also, too, here's another match. Here's a bill with an open balance of $368.57, and we had a ACH or a debit go out for $368.57, and now we can go ahead and pay that bill off with this payment that we made. And go ahead and click match. Now, looks here, we also had another health insurance transaction. This is one that is not already in QuickBooks. And this happens a lot with when people use their debit card, because when a client is writing checks, paying bills, a lot of times they'll record that, especially if it's a bill and a bill payment, in QBO, and it will be able to match it. If you're paying something online through online banking, that's where some of those get missed of being entered in. But this is what's great about the bank feeds is you see that coming in, and now you can go ahead and record that expense. So go ahead and click on it. And here you want to make sure that all this information is going to be for reporting purposes. So if you want it to show up on a report, you got to make sure that that data is entered in. So let's go ahead and add our health insurance service company. So we can go ahead, if it's not already in here, let's go ahead and type health and health insurance vendor. So go ahead and choose that vendor. We'll go ahead and choose health insurance here, or insurance. Here we go. You can make any memos. Maybe this was, for an employee. Make any type of notes there. And then we can come over here and add that transaction to our register. Let's go ahead and record some credit card, because a lot of the ones on credit card are going to be recurring transactions. This is where you'd want to set up a rule. So if it has either a default description, which those can be a little bit tricky, but if it definitely has a description, a detailed bank description, and an amount that is reoccurring each month on the same card, go ahead and create a rule for that. So let's go ahead and create a rule. You can do these in different ways. You can sort in here just like how you do in Excel, and you can see. So here we've got two Southwest, transactions. Maybe they bought a meal or something on their internet probably. But if you see multiple transactions, what you can do is you can make sure that you set up a rule, and then it can automatically add that for you, taking time to concentrate on other tasks that can help you save time throughout the month. So let's go ahead and, so for instance, this is a perfect one right here. On 5/2 and 6/2, they paid their CPA $299, so, or CP&A LLC. So here you can see that is a recurring transaction. What we can do is set up a rule for this. If you have multiple months, make sure that you do the oldest date first and set up the rule on that one. So what we can do is create a rule. And what you're going to do is name this rule. So I can call it, CPA. In the description, it's going to bring over the description that's in that. And then also I can add another condition, and that's where I'm going to put the $299. Because as you can see, different descriptions could mean different vendors. Even though it's different amounts, it could be separate vendors. And you want to make sure that you're recording that rule, and it's going to be accurate from time to time. So our changing here, we're going to use amount equals the $2.99. So if the description is going to be this description and this amount, then it's going to go ahead and put it to, make sure our category is right here. We're going to put it to accounting fees. Make sure our vendor is in here. Now I will come down here as well too. You can have it auto add, which I definitely recommend, especially if you know it's reoccurring, it's been working for the past couple months. If it's a new rule, I would not have it auto add. Take that off, make sure it works for the next couple months and it's not applying, the rule's not applying to any other transactions, and then you're safe to come back in here and switch it to auto add. So let's go ahead and save that. And as soon as we save that rule, you'll see when we come back into the banking, it's now applied that rule, and you can come in here and add both of those. You can also batch add. So mark both of those over here and accept. And these are ways that we can make sure that all of our data is getting into QuickBooks accurately, because again, this is where the data is being entered, and then every follow-on is going to be when we reconcile, when we're running reports, and when owners are going to be pulling that data. So you want to make sure your data is correct. Now, another one is a credit card payment. So if we come in here, we can see that we've got a payment and it's paired to another transaction. So you can see that the credit card received this payment. And if we go to the 0828 account, so let's click on that one, we'll see that they made a payment on 5/17. Let's change our dates here because now we're still in spent. So if you see this little triangle here, so let's click on date, go down to 5/17, or actually on the banking side, it's probably going to be the date afterwards, because they will hit the credit card first and then hit the checking account. Am I in the right account here? Yeah, 0828, where's our 7,000? Right here. So here's our American Express payment. So see how the date hit the 18th, because it's going to be, you're going to make the payment on the American Express, and then it's going to hit the checking account. So, but here's our 738.25. So what we can do is add that credit card payment. And if we also go back to American Express now, you're going to see that $7,000 payment out of here, because it's already added it both to the American Express as a payment, as well as a deduction or a withdrawal from the checking account. And as you can see, it's now no longer here because of the date. So you can see that that's already been entered in. So that's how they kind of talk to each other when you've got all of your accounts linked in banking. Now let's go to a transaction where we need to add the vendor from the bank feeds, which if it's a possibility for you, I would highly recommend, especially if they are needing a W-9. So I'll show you how to do all of that right here from the bank feeds. So QuickBooks will always have a little suggestion here, usually from the bank detail. If it's not already a vendor, you can add it straight from here. So even by typing it in here, nothing shows up. It says add new lawyer. QBO has become very smart. Thank you, AI. And so let's go ahead and click on add new. And I'm going to go ahead and move my screen over a little bit so that you can actually even see the W-9 that they've already submitted. And we want to make sure that we get their information in here so that at the end of the year, their address, W-9 information is already in here, easy for us to input and calculate their W-9s. And then keep scrolling down. Now, two things for W-9s is make sure you track payments for a 1099 if they need to be tracked, and put in their EIN, which you can see here is this number here. And click save. Actually, one more thing too is that I always see this at add attachment. You can also then add that W-9 to that vendor file in QBO, and I highly recommend this as well. So you'd be able to add that W-9. And so if anyone has any issues, do we have a W-9, do we not? You can look right in that vendor information and see that they did submit their W-9. So go ahead and click save. Let's go ahead and change this to the correct account. Professional fees, or it might be called legal and professional fees, and come over here and add. Now we have our appropriate vendor and our W-9 attached to it. Now I also want to talk about suggested categories. QBO has gotten really, really good at suggesting, and sometimes they can also be very, very wrong. So just be careful with that. But as you can see here, as soon as we did that one for lawyer that we just did, it switched that to professional fees because it saw the lawyer, it saw that rule, all the data associated with that. And the last one we did was professional fees. So that's great, but we still are missing the vendor here. So now what we want to make sure is we come in here and we add that vendor we just set up. We've got our professional fees in here, and now we can add. All right, let's keep on adding some transactions. All right, so here you can see loan payment. Not all transactions are going to be associated with just income and expenses. They can also hit the balance sheet accounts. So we want to make sure, here's a loan payment, that this affects the balance sheet liability and reduces that liability. So let's come in here, and they have a PPP loan, and this was made to the Small Business Association, so make sure we add that as their vendor. And now you can see here, this is hitting the long-term liability. And click Add. All right, here's some commission fees. So for the management company, let's put them in here for the vendor. Come in here, choose our commission fees, and click Add. So just a regular expense. Now, we also have an owner draw. So depending on what type of entity the business is set up to, it can be actually set up as draws, just, distributions. It's pretty much the owner taking money out. And we want to make sure that this goes against their distribution account. And I have two here. So current year and prior year. We're going to choose current year because that is the current year that we are in. And you can go ahead, we'll add our owner in here. And click Save. And Add. Now also too, it just might be a Schedule C self-employed. So they might have, they might, again, accidentally commingle funds between the business and their personal. Sometimes that's easy to use the wrong card. But if we can see in here, let's see, maybe this 55, they wrote this check and oops, they took the wrong checkbook or, used the wrong one by accident. That's okay, but we also want to make sure that that doesn't go as an expense on the P&L because it's not a business expense. It was the owner spending that. So that can go in several, either as a draw, a distribution, or it can just be for owner's personal expenses, especially if they're a Schedule C or self-employed. And again, we can put that owner name in here that we just added. And you can see that that is an equity account. So again, hitting the balance sheet, not the P&L, because we don't want that to go as a business expense. It was an owner personal expense. And let's go ahead and add that. Now we also have some Intuit payments here. So these are sales. So now this would be our income. So it's a deposit coming into the bank. These are sales. So whether they're a customer payment and hitting an invoice as a payment like we did in the beginning, or you can record this straight to an income account. It could come from another POS system, and so a monthly, deposit goes in, so you might not need to record the customer detail because that's in your point of sale system, or say in Square or Shopify, so you just need to record the income, and so you can do that in a bulk deposit. And click Add. Now, all of these that we saw, online banking transfer, check, to checking 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, here's our checking 1, 2, 3, 4, and then here's our checking 0828. You can come through here, record those transfers. And you can see here that the category that it's going to is the 1, 2, 3, 4 account. So the description, once this adds, let's go ahead and look in the description. And down here, online banking transfer to checking 1, 2, 3, 4. And you can see that it is a spent. So it's going out of this 0828 account to transfer to the 1, 2, 3, 4 account. So we can go ahead and record that transfer. Now, another way you can do this as well is do a batch. So if you've kind of verified all of these, this is, something that happens within these accounts. And this typically happens a lot with payroll, is they'll transfer money into the payroll account just to cover the payroll expenses. You can also batch. Don't come in here and click record transfer, record transfer, record transfer. Go ahead and click on all these that have a paired transaction in that account. And then accept. So that bulk accepts them or enters them in. So now you're left to these to either manually enter in. And here it doesn't look like these caught into the other one. So online banking transfer to checking 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's go ahead and choose that and add. Same thing for this one too, the description. So let's go ahead and record that transfer. All right, this looks like utilities. Oh, and our gas electric is not in there. So let's go ahead and add our gas company in there. And it looks like this is some shipping. Oh, and NeoPost is not in there, so let's add that one. Now, again, if these were vendors, you would want to make sure that you're adding all of their vendor information, you know, whether it's to contact them, to supply them a 1099 at the end of the year. So this looks like a banking fee. Now here, so this looks, you know, it probably sees transfer. It's reading transfer, and it's like, oh, that's a transfer. It's not. It's categorized. This is probably a banking fee that they were maybe connecting another, you know, bank, and they needed to do that authorization charge to get that in there. And here's another check, and it chose owner's personal expenses. However, that's not for that. This check was for a commission to that management company. And click add. Now that we've entered all the transactions, the next step here is to reconcile the account.